Hey guys, it's mcfixit here. We're going to be making this Black Panther stencil die on this little bit older Champion Valk. I've thrown this one quite a few different times, and so it is a used disc, but it will still work pretty well, and I like the coloration on it, and that it's also kind of see-through in the center, so we'll have to remove the original stamp and work on putting a stencil die. So I'll walk through all the tools, the supplies, and the know-how on how you can do this project yourself. And so let's just go ahead and jump on in. First thing you're gonna need is whatever disc you want. I'm choosing a kind of a purplish blue disc because I think that will work really well with the Black Panther logo put on there. I do not have the circle cut out. That's just to give you guys kind of a reference and myself for how big the stencil will be. So I went ahead and cut that on a 5160 Oracle. This is the transparent one, which is a little harder to see. The white one has the blue underneath it, or the blue as I'm weeding it, but this one does not. It'll be white, so it'll be kind of hard to see, but you'll kind of get the picture as I'm telling you and walking you through that. You'll want plenty of paper towels, I mean plenty. I like to use this little disc 3D print thing I made. Just helps set the disc on there and gets it nice and centered and leveled. You're going to want some Dawn dish soap and water in a spray bottle or a sink nearby. Some transfer paper. With this transfer paper, I went ahead and cut a 12-inch by 12-inch, which matches my Oracle 6150 vinyl. And I just folded it in half twice, drew lines with a Sharpie, put a disc down, drew a circle around. That becomes your bullseye. Really, really helpful. I used an electric burner, and so pretty inexpensive on Amazon. Some acetone. I'm going to use iDye Black, and so I've already mixed this. This thing's about 3/4 full. The container is about as big as the package here, but since there's water in it and dye in it, I'm not going to like lift it up and show you in case any of it spills out. But you just use half of one of these little tablets. Make sure it's the poly version, and you mix it in some warm water in a mason jar just about as big as that container. Gloves, super helpful. Sharpie, I've already mentioned that. Some kind of pick tool. Some kind of a scraper tool or old gift card. A funnel is really helpful. Then I have this old pan. A pair of scissors can be really helpful as well when you're cutting the pack. Then this is just a heat gun that has 2 different settings. You probably can use a hair dryer as well. I'm finding that this works really well to help seat the stamp or seat the vinyl into the disc itself, and I think it helps create less air bubbles as well. So let's go ahead and jump on into this project. Go ahead and put your gloves on and set up your work area. So I kind of just scoot everything back so I have plenty of access to everything. It just kind of helps me kind of stay organized as well. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and fold a paper towel a couple of times, and we will go ahead and erase this original stamp, and you'll see it just disappears relatively quickly. The acetone also kind of helps clean the disc, but we do also want to be careful because the acetone also eats through plastic, and so we don't want to just leave it on there, but go lots of different directions, up, down, left, and right, to get all of that original stencil off of there. Because those stamps on there, the original ones, do come off relatively easy. Sometimes you got to put a little bit of elbow grease in them, but for the most part they will kind of deteriorate over time as well. You can go in circles, back and forth, whatever it takes. And I do notice sometimes these like last little parts are sometimes the harder ones to get out, and some of the dots on this one as well. And so just take your time, get it as much out as possible. So I think that looks pretty good. Because that is acetone, it does eat through gloves. You can see it's starting to eat through parts of my gloves, which is why I wear gloves, because you don't want it eating through your hand. Go ahead and spray it with some Dawn dish soap and water to give it kind of one last final cleaning. perfect. Throw that off to the side. We're gonna go ahead and get our stencil and begin to weed it. So I like to have a printout right next to it. That really does help me know what I'm doing. With the disc, anything you want to be that darker color, whether you choose black or blue or red or green or whatever you like, preferably black. Panther probably will be black if you're doing the exact same thing I am. We want to weed out all of the parts we want to be black. We don't want to weed out anything that's going to stay white. So I am going to press down lightly at about a 45-degree angle with the scraper tool, just ensuring all of that looks really, really solid. And so we were just going to go ahead and start. I'll start with the face because I think that's going to be the easier one to do. And you just slowly start to pull it. And sometimes you do have hiccups, like right here, did not want to go down, so I am going to need to make sure that goes down. Go slow, this is not a race. Typically, whenever I go too fast is when I accidentally tear something. But overall, that face came off pretty easy. And if that was a white stencil and you wanted that someplace else, you probably could put that someplace else because that came off all together in one piece. But being a clear stencil, you can't really see it. But it does kind of help with some of these to have the clear stencils, so that's why I still continue to buy them. And so anything you want to be black, again, you're going to go ahead and get in there, get it off. So this should be kind of the necklace area. Oh no. And see, sometimes you pull too much. So we're gonna have to go back and replace this other piece. Hopefully we can get it pretty lined up, and we did. Fantastic. Okay. That turned out pretty well. I did notice there, it looks like there's a little hair right there that I am going to want to get out. Then inside of each of the necklaces has that little, I don't know what you would even call it, little piece. So we'll go ahead and quickly get each one of those out. This is a pretty quick weeding on this one. There's not too much intricacy. So I did not fast forward it. Some of my other ones that you spend 20 minutes getting all the weeding done. Once you kind of get started, it's all the same the whole time. So I fast forward. But this one's relatively simple. Okay. So there's a couple of things you can do. And what I think I'm going to do, let's go ahead and grab my disc and find out where I want this thing to actually sit on here. I think I like that right there. Then I'm just going to go ahead and draw a circle around this. Because this is a clear one, it's going to be harder to see. So that's just what I've chosen to do. There's other things you could choose to do as well if you would like, but that right there will help get me lined up. So we're going to go ahead and grab your transfer paper and go ahead and get over your disc exactly where you want that thing to sit. And I did, when I made this transfer paper, this is on just a touch bigger of a disc. It's a wombat. And so it may not look perfect, the two circles, but that is okay. It's good enough for what I need it to do for the transfer paper. And I intentionally chose kind of a bigger disc like the wombat because you have the ability to kind of get a little bit bigger thing around the side of it. So we're going to go ahead and set this up because I do like to have the disc with the original. You can kind of see it at a severe angle and get that nice and lined up on here. Again, this is an optional thing, but I really, really do like it. You can find it on Thingiverse if you have a 3D printer or a buddy has a 3D printer. Go ahead and peel one of the corners back. And hopefully as you begin to peel it, it all sticks together and everything comes off just like so. Nope, it's not. So you need to spend a few more seconds scraping it in. I've used this transfer paper probably well over a dozen times. So we're probably getting to the point we may need to cut a new piece. But they do last a very long time. I think that came out perfect. Go ahead and dispose of that properly. If you're able to recycle it in your area, go for it. And then we are just going to line this up. Again, this is why I really like this setup, because it just helps me get a better center on the disc. I'm going to go ahead and scoop that out of the way. I'm just going to press that down for a second, and then we're going to go ahead and heat up our die. So go ahead and grab your die. You might want to stir it a little bit and go ahead and gently pull it down in. You might see some liquid. I just did another disc die a few minutes ago, and so that's what you're seeing. And then I do like to just make sure nothing came off on the side, and go ahead and set it down. You do want enough to kind of fill up the bottom of it. And we'll go ahead and turn that on to about 2.5, almost 3. And if you spilled anything on your beautiful work table, go ahead and make sure you get that. And look, I had a piece of stencil from another one. That kind of looks like an A. Fantastic. So we'll go ahead and put that back over here. This is not where you have to worry about getting all the air bubbles out. We're just wanting it to stick to it. So that's the biggest thing right now. Go ahead and flip that over. And we're going to go ahead and peel this and put it on the back. Just like so. And you just kind of fold all this fun stuff over. This will help any of it from getting on the rim or anywhere else on your disc. So that's kind of a good thing with this. And one thing I don't think I put in the original, you might want a piece of tape on the back side of this, so you can just get some like blue tape or whatever kind of tape you have. I have tons of painter's tape always because I use it like crazy for everything I do. You can always check out my other videos and see what I use it on, because I got tons of different things you can watch. House repair, car repair, disc dies, some drone shots. Okay, then you just stick it down on there. That just becomes a nice little handle when it's in the hotbed, because this gets kind of slippery. So we'll go ahead and toss it over and just slowly begin to peel at about a 45-degree angle. You do not have to pull quickly, just nice and slow. And beautiful. Go ahead and put this back down on the shiny side, just like so. Save it for another disc die. So this is where we're going to spend some quality time just making sure all this is pressed in properly. You can use your hands, you can use whatever you need to just kind of make sure we get all of the air bubbles out. Because this is a clear one, you may need to spend a bit more time making sure all the air bubbles are out, because it sometimes gets hard to see because you do have the clear on the underside. You can also use a heat gun. If you do it, use it on setting number 1, not number 2, and spend a few seconds going over it. This helps secure everything down. That little bit of heat really does help a lot. So you're not putting it in one concentrated area, just moving it back and forth, back and forth. Just like so. And then spend some time not throwing everything on the ground. Spend some time really kind of working this into the plastic, this vinyl, getting every air bubble you possibly can out. That will give you the best final product. You can also take off a glove, because at this point your hand should be pretty sweaty from doing the work, because it is nice and warm in my garage today. Almost had to put on the ceiling fan. And it's still early, so it's going to be a hot day today. Keep an eye on over here. You do not want this to boil. You just want it to begin to smoke, and it's almost there. But as soon as it gets there, I go ahead and turn it off, keep it on the burner so it kind of stays warm, but will not continue to get hotter. If it does end up boiling, turn it off, remove it from the heat, let it cool down for a while. Don't get overzealous and feel like, oh, you need it boiling, because you really, honestly, you do not need it to boil. Whenever it boils, I ruin disc. I think it's just too hot for the plastic and the stencil vinyl for the stencil. Like, I just think it's too much. So just trust me. Don't use my error. You know what I'm going to do? In fact, I know I didn't show this in the tools and supplies again. This one is so hard to see because it's purple and clear. I'm going to get a razor blade, and I'm actually going to cut this one on the edge because I'm having a hard time seeing through. So I'm not cutting into the plastic. I'm literally just cutting the excess vinyl off. It's really hard to see where we're at. And then I'm just going to go ahead and peel all this out just to give myself a little bit better view. Yeah, that's going to help a lot because the air bubbles do not look like they're coming out, but I really think it was from underneath. So we'll save that little piece of blue tape probably. But we should be able to get a good grip on it now, so probably not. So you didn't even need that. Yeah, that's much better. You can actually see what you're doing. I'm going to heat this back up for another second, and it's starting to smoke, so we'll go ahead and turn it off. Does not need to smoke a lot, just a little. Okay, I'm liking that. Again, you're not putting so much heat on it that you're doing anything super crazy. If the bubbles are far enough away from the edge, sometimes I actually push them the other way instead of pushing it to the edge. Might seem kind of crazy, but you don't really have to worry about it if it's kind of over here. You just have to worry about it if it's right next to it. So there's a lot of detail in here that you really want to make sure you get and scrape all of those air bubbles out or push them all out. Because that's where the disc dies normally mess up, is when you have air bubbles and it's not properly seated into the plastic, and the little bit of air bubble allows the liquid to get around and dye a part you don't want dyed. And it is easy to mess up disc if you do not get all the air bubbles out. So again, take some quality time making sure it's exactly what you want it to be. I'm really liking how this one is, and so we're going to go ahead and pull this off. I will stir it once or twice just to make sure everything is moving around in there. And then I'm going to be looking for air bubbles. You can see it's probably still smoking a little bit on your camera, and you can kind of see the dye is kind of moving around in there. And so go to some different angles, making sure there are no air bubbles. And then when you do this, you go ahead and kind of put it down at an angle to remove any additional air bubbles. Try not to touch the side of your pan because it will be hot. Just like so. We're going to go ahead and let that sit for 5 solid minutes. Okay, it's been 5 minutes now, so we're going to go ahead and get things set up to be able to pull this out and give it kind of a little bit of a test to see if we like it, because if we don't, we can always set it back down in for a little bit longer. So we'll go ahead and grab some paper towels as well, have those nice and handy, and go ahead and lift up. Let as much of it drain as possible. That will let you be able to have future disc dyes without having to buy more dye. Once you got most of it off, go ahead and give it a quick wipe. And that looks nice and dark. I really, really like that. So I think we're going to leave that like that. I'm going to go ahead and set this back up here. We will put that in the container, probably off video, but That's why you have the funnel to be able to do that. And we'll go ahead and clean up really quickly. This is just Dawn dish soap and water like I've used before to clean the disc. And one to kind of dry it, we'll reuse that one later. And now it's time to weed and see what it looks like. So I'm going to spend some time just actually pulling the back side off first, because that should give us a lot of it at once. Oh, there's my official timer. That was a few seconds early, but that's okay. And sometimes you do need to let it sit for longer than 5 minutes. It just kind of depends on how warm everything is and where you're doing this at and plastic type and everything else. So if you don't like how dark it is or whatever color you want to put on there, honestly, just spend a few more moments in the solution in that dye and make it happen how you want it to. It's your disc dye. Make it look sweet. Sometimes these get really sticky on certain types of plastic, and then other plastics it seems like they just kind of like fall right off. So not exactly certain why that happens, except probably just how the plastic is made. And it seems like some batches of vinyl are better than others. I've had some bad batches of vinyl where it seems like they don't stick near as much as other batches. I don't know why that is as well, but that's just kind of a heads up if you're having some issues. It may not actually be what you're doing. Sometimes it could be a bad vinyl. Normally the whole pack's not bad. Normally it's just like a single one or two out of a pack. I buy them in a 12 pack, or sometimes they have like a multi-pack discount on Amazon. Whatever you can find. I'm sure you can go to other stores too and find it as well. But I will have a link in the description for all the different supplies and the tools and everything else that I used. If that's helpful for you, go for it. If it's not, fantastic. So just continue to pull that thing around. And then now you're going to need your weeding tool, and just go ahead and weed out all of those clear pieces of vinyl to help give it its design and shape. And when you're doing this, do not stick it down in it. Just go to the side of it and gently begin to pull, and normally it does come off. Sometimes it does take a touch longer, but overall that normally works pretty well for at least me. I've had really good luck with it. You just don't want to dig into your plastic. Because I mean, you got to get an ace with your disc, and that could definitely mess it up to where you don't get that ace you've been looking for. That stuff is pretty sticky, especially when you're wearing gloves, but I do encourage you to wear gloves. Don't have to, your choice, but at least for me it helps kind of keep everything together. So far this is looking sweet. I'm really liking how this is turning out. I think one of the biggest improvements I've done recently, if you watch any of my older videos, is this heat gun. I'm sure you can use a hair dryer. I just don't have a hair dryer. So I have a heat gun, so just don't put it too hot because you can melt plastic with it. That one's a pretty heavy duty one for lots of applications. But wow, I really like how this one turned out. I'm going to go ahead and clean it up one last time. So, and clean her on up. I think that one turned out really awesome. I like that it's still clear, but definitely you can tell it is Black Panther. And so hopefully that was helpful for you. If it was, please make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share this with a friend, watch some of my other videos, help me out, help my channel grow. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day.